What makes a good villain? Better yet, in your own words, what makes a good character? Is it their motivations and actions? Could shallow or simple objectives be rectified when the game hints at a deeper, far more complex layer of reasoning, thanks to a tragic or motivational backstory that may slowly be revealed to us? Can a character appeal one-dimensional at the start, only to slowly become one of the best villains ever through the story's natural progression and their inability to either re-establish control of themselves or of the narrative? I don't believe there's any one correct way to tell a story or to really portray a villain. I'm sure in asking these questions, at least one villain came to your mind no matter the IP. For me, Dutch from the Red Dead series is one that always is cited as that embodiment of ambiguity. Did he always have a plan and cared for everyone, or as everything fell apart and he lost control of every situation, did his true colors really start to show towards the end? As far as one-dimensional characters go, I always think of Handsome Jack. His intro is nothing to write home about. With a name like that, he plays into the character of being arrogant. A rich, murdering CEO that doesn't take anyone seriously. But then through audio logs, and then as the game progresses, you learn that Handsome Jack's mentality is quite complex. He quite literally wears the mask that he hides behind. He was once a low-level programmer that came up from an abusive household, who would go on to lose his wife in a freak accident by his daughter's rage, taking over an automated turret and killing her. Family tragedies would come to parallel Jack's rise to power, and despite his poorly guided way of doing it, Jack would do everything in his power to protect his daughter he deeply loved. But those are stories for other videos. Today we're discussing Nariaki Saito, the false shogun of the north, and Khotun Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, the leader of the invasion of the island of Tsushima. Now, the historical context behind both of these characters are great. The backdrop behind both of them are real events in history, with their own presentations coming from very different origin stories. Khotun Khan was the head of an invading force, while Lord Saito was a defeated lord that refused to accept his new title of being an outlaw, and sought to establish a new ruling order on another island that was safe from the powers of the shogun and the samurai that executed his bidding. Truthfully, when presented like that, there is so much that could have been done with Lord Saito's background. And although the Yotei 6, along with Lord Saito, are all fictional characters, the background of each Yotei 6 member arguably strengthens Saito's own background even more, while even aspects of what is the most interesting parts of Saito's character never fully explored. Since we're effectively comparing Saito to the Khan, and trying to do so in as much of a fair manner as possible, I thought it best to start from the very beginning, the way both characters are introduced. To be fair, Lord Saito isn't the only villain that must be introduced, so as far as the whole Yotei 6 introduction goes, it serves its purpose well. Atsu as a young child is standing terrified at the man who just butchered her entire family. His face and body is completely covered in their blood, and despite that, he finds a moment to endearingly call her Little Wolf, while apologizing and even at this point reaching out to caress her. The rest of the members stand back and just watch this unfold. With this intro scene really having the Oni and the snake as the biggest threats apart from Saito, as the snake is the one that laughs at Atsu while the Oni lights the tree on fire for her to burn. Since Saito doesn't kill Atsu like he could have and instead opts to just walk away while she burns, only adds credence to the idea that he in fact didn't want to kill her, and on some level left his conscience clean for the other members to do the dirty work. It's a phenomenal scene that kicks off Atsu's origin story, the hatred she holds for the Yotei 6, and hints at something more with Lord Saito. Why does he seem to hold this level of affection for her? What relationship did they have? Or if there wasn't any relationship, why would there even be this substance to Saito? What is the reason for him to reach out and try to caress her after he pinned her to a tree to then just abruptly turn around and walk away? There's so many more questions attached to the fact that he just murdered her entire family that alludes to this interesting relationship or dynamic between Atsu and Saito that leaves you hoping that this is further delved upon as the game progresses. For the keen-eyed, this isn't just about avenging your family anymore, it's about what the hell kind of connection really existed between these two. How's that for the Khan's introduction? Well, the Khan's intro is equally as savage. 80 samurai across the entire island of Tsushima come to face the invaders, all of them willing to die just to slow the invasion of thousands of Mongol warriors. Lord Adachi is sent down by Lord Shimura to face their best warrior, only to be met with the Khan himself. The Khan, without hesitating, disgraces him by throwing wine at him, lights him on fire, and then quickly decapitates him, and then presents an ultimatum to the rest of the samurai. There are no negotiations. You bend the knee or you will die. Pick your choice. Which is exactly what the samurai do, resulting in all of them getting slaughtered, save for Shimada. It's here where I'd say the true start of Khotun Khan begins, as it remains constant throughout the whole story of him trying to get Shimada to see the futility in fighting. He even shows him respect by bowing, acknowledging he is a warrior as evidence of the charge he just led, but the Khan lets him in on a little secret. He's been preparing in a way that far differs from how Shimada has. The Khan has learned their language, their traditions, their beliefs, and which villages were going to be a problem and which were going to be helpful and aid in the invasion. He has figured them out. And so he gives Shimada one final chance to surrender. And although it looks like he kills him, he instead knocks Shimada out, which I think in hindsight, after looking at this and really trying to dissect the Khan and Lord Saito, I think this was an intelligent move on the Khan. If he really immersed himself in understanding Tsushima Island and the systems in place, then it would be believable that he was in fact dealing with Nagito, and that he would be the only person capable of convincing the rest of the samurai and the rest of the island to just yielding. After the Khan knocks out Lord Shimada and takes him as a prisoner, and Jin finally wakes up thanks to the efforts of Yuna. The follow-up sequence shows the creation of Jin's relationship to Lord Shimada, his devotion to duty and honor, and how he can't fight in the traditional sense, because it proves futile when he loses a fight to the Khan and is thrown over the side of a bridge. This would come to form the backbone of his need to adapt in order to free his uncle, whether if he likes it or not. That brings us to the heart of his internal struggle. Is his duty, honor, and everything that he's been raised on and taught to fight accordingly worth sacrificing in order to save his uncle and the people of Tsushima? This would also serve as another angle for the Khan to use in order to break Shimada's will. He would directly use Jin as a pawn against Shimada, who for the first portion of the game remains under the Khan's captivity. For Yotei, since the other members of the Yotei 6 need to be properly introduced, Saito himself isn't directly followed up on. Instead, it's Atsu's return home from the mainland and instantly going after the snake. Now this I don't think is inherently bad. While I do admit there is a missed opportunity in properly playing up to the snake, as I do think his background story and the storytelling elements within his fight do very well at showcasing Atsu's fear of finally facing the people who have haunted her dreams for the last 16 years, and also showing that even in a drunken state, the snake is a formidable opponent. The problem for me comes in a disconnect. And this could be thanks to me already breaking down the stories of each Yotei 6 member and their connection to Saito, and this could also touch on the heart of another point within this entire game, that Saito sits on a seat of power that isn't officially established. When I say there's a weird disconnect within the world and Saito's established power, what I mean is from the night of the burning tree, which is the day Atsu's parents are killed, to the day she returns to Ezo and kills the snake, it's been 16 years. During that time span, she's been fighting on the mainland as a mercenary to learn how to properly fight so that way she can return home. That 16-year time span feels like it evolves Atsu without properly evolving the island or progressing Saito's power. And I believe this can be narrowed down to two primary reasons. The first of which is every section of the game falls under a different Yotei 6 member that feels as if they operate independently from Lord Saito. The Snake's men are titled as outlaws, are disheveled, and appear to act with far less discipline than the rest of Saito's forces under the other members' command. Take Ishikari Plains for example. The Oni raiders have unyielding loyalty to the Oni. So much so that it even appears he can rival Lord Saito as the proper shogun. Within his region, he utilizes far more blunt and oppressive measures as compared to the Kitsune, where in Teshio Ridge, instead of raising villages and engaging in clan Matsumai in open conflict, similar to the Oni, the Kitsune on the other hand utilizes the ways of the shinobi with the aid of poison. While each Yotei 6 member pledge loyalty to Lord Saito, all of them except for the Kitsune's region utilize the same color schemes to symbolize said loyalty. But there's no real connective tissue with Saito to them apart from that. Not in terms of how they enact what they claim is Saito's will upon said region, their leadership styles, or their vision apart from them just saying, this is Lord Saito's land now. And so consequently, the way the game provides these regions and the enemies within it It gives the impression that these Yotei 6 were individual leaders and not the extension of Saito's actual seat of power like they claim they are. Funny enough, this leads directly into the second reason. It doesn't properly feel like the conflict between Clan Saito and Clan Matsumai have progressed over the last decade or so. Rather, it feels more like it's all in the beginning stages. If we take Clan Matsumai stepping up its capability to engage Lord Saito and Ezo by way of how they ask for reinforcements and appear to be ramping up operations in all regions, we see so with Lord Kitamori and Commander Wada overseeing a bridge construction to support more samurai to flood Ishikari Plains in order to properly and definitively defeat the Oni, while Commander Fujita and Teshio Ridge gains a contact revealing more information on the Kitsune's poison harvesting operation. Let's also not forget that Master Yoshida is training more Matsumai samurai in order to engage the Saito brothers and their forces more effectively. And so there is an argument to be made that what we are seeing is in fact a fight over territory that has been going on for quite some time. And only now is Matsumai able to turn the tables, or at least mount a formidable fighting force. The Saito brothers' attack on Oshima Coast with their overwhelming forces and manpower reveal that this has also been a long time coming, especially since even Oyuki had no idea they had a naval fleet or were as far ahead in being able to launch an invasion as they were. So when comparing the forces and how things are ramping up, it does seem viable, but there's a crucial element in this that really makes it feel like this conflict never progressed. And that's when you look at the land itself and the civilians caught in the crossfire or the masters that are forced into exile. It doesn't feel like over the last decade, none of the Yotei 6 members ever fully managed to take control of any one region. Which brings up the question of, well, what was the starting point of everything? What was the presence of Clan Matsumai on Ezo as Lord Saito and the Yotei 6 ventured here? Did Clan Matsumai already have a presence on Ezo? Master Takahashi says he was the first to mount a resistance against the Oni. His raiders have been after him ever since, showing failure to capture a single Yari master that's exiled out on a broken patch of an island. Hana is attacking the shinobi, showing resistance by the populace up in the north as well, but the only one with any ties to Clan Matsumai is Master Yoshida, who was hunting the Saito brothers down for a year with Matsumai's samurai. This is important and all relevant because it brings up a question that the game doesn't answer, which is how historical is the population on Ezo? The enemies we face are all fictional, but Ezo was a land lacking any established authority. And if Clan Matsumai was really an extension of the shogun's official power by trying to bring this island under the shogun's rule, then technically speaking, Clan Matsumai would have had a later start to establishing a foothold on the island than Lord Saito would have. And hence further, showing all of the members' inability to further bring this island under their control, alluding to a number of things that don't arise until you really start tearing this game apart like I am now and trying to dig much deeper. But really the short version of it all is, for me, it feels like this war between Matsumai and Saito has been gridlocked in a way that makes Saito's forces feel fractured with no real progression from the Night of the Burning Tree. And really, both of my examples of these members acting independently and Saito's grip on Ezo feeling frozen could have been solved with one simple move: a cutscene. A simple 15 to 30 second cutscene, similar to how we see him interact with his children after the death of the Oni and the Kitsune. But with the other members, perhaps a quick flashback, following the Night of the Burning Tree where we see Saito interact with the snake, or the Oni. And it's during this cutscene we would have been able to get some insight into how the two of them interacted, the level of respect from one member to the other, and even more depth to Saito that feels like it's already kind of there. I've mentioned in previous videos of how Saito does many things in his power to keep that image of him being a benevolent, loving lord safe. And in the aftermath of killing Kengo, had we gotten a cutscene of how he tells the Oni to head to Ishikari Plains and seize control of the region in a way where it's all up to his own personal discretion, using whatever means he feels necessary and working closely with the other members to guarantee victory in their individual regions. And once that's achieved and Ezo falls under a unified authority, then the Oni, Kitsune, Snake, and Saito brothers would all bend the knee and say this is all belonging to Lord Saito, would have been a very perfect yet simple move that alleviates the lack of that connective tissue. It would have felt the way it was supposed to. These people were working for Saito, bringing Saito's vision to life, and they did have a relationship with their lord. Knowing what they were doing in some cases would hurt Saito's image more than help it. By comparison, as Jin continued gathering allies and boosting his own skill sets in a different form of fighting, the Khan has moments where he speaks to Lord Shimura, sharing his nephew's alive and he should watch out.
Follow a path of honor.
It is one of the many differences between us.
Then why have my men found their brothers stabbed in the back?
Lord Sakai would never resort to such tactics.
War brings out who we truly are.
It has made you a dog, unleashed by your cousin Kublai to rape and pillage at his command.
Your nephew strays from the warrior's path. He will become what you hate, unless you join my empire's fight for peace.
You don't want allies. You want soldiers to overthrow the Shogun.
Consider my offer. Help your nephew regain his honor before his cowardice goes too far. And before I bring you his head.
This scene displays how the Khan starts to begin to alter his strategy in getting Shimura to give in. He proposes that in order to save his nephew and their honor, Shimura should join the Khan in their empire. And as we'll see, the Khan's manipulation only continues to evolve, while Saito's, despite everything pointing to a better way of said manipulation being achieved, just sadly doesn't go anywhere. Throughout much of Yotei, we're told by Clan Matsumai and civilians that Lord Saito's an oppressor. People are forced to join his ranks without proper pay, resulting in many either disappearing, being killed, or just absorbed into Saito's growing clan. All of this happens while Saito claims he's bringing freedom, protection, and salvation from the real enemy, the Shogun and Clan Matsumai. At times, particularly when overhearing the choice civilians are placed with between either building a bridge for Clan Matsumai while being fed properly, compared to actually being subjected to forced labor or burned alive at the hands of the Oni, I think it's all great environmental storytelling. It reinforces the notion that this is an island caught between two clans, with the population put in a position of accepting the lesser evil rather than joining a side they truly believe in or fully support. Other moments we hear exactly why so many people are flocking to Lord Saito, thanks to his vision of freedom and security, explaining through hearsay of why so many are flocking to Saito's side, despite the suffering many are subjected to at his hands, or at the very least the forces that claim they are acting under their lord's will. When Atsu sneaks into Saito's training camp and directly confronts Saito for the first time, this could have been a perfect moment to work on that duality of trying to get Atsu to come to his side and promise her the freedom that he's guaranteed so many others. Now, Sucker Punch does do this to a degree, but not as well as it should have been done, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Instead, I think it's worth noting that Saito greets Atsu with amusement, maybe even a little bit of happiness that she in fact survived the last 16 years, and continues to enact on that manipulation. This scene where he walks her out to his training grounds, I will play in its entirety because I feel it's one of, if not the biggest missed opportunity of the entire game in terms of further developing Lord Saito.
Life has not been kind to you, has it, little wolf?
Don't call me that.
Tell me, when you were fighting all those battles, did you ever find a lord willing to name you samurai?
You know I didn't.
The Shogun's Matsumai don't want warriors like you and me. They want dogs, men who can be trained, made loyal.
You're not different. Only instead of honor, you promise people freedom. To keep their swords, to become samurai. It's all bullshit to make them serve you.
Except the Matsumai would never give a woman a sword. The Shogun would say, a wolf cannot be tamed. He may be right. But I'm still tempted to try. Let's see what you've learned, little wolf.
In this scene, Saito plays on Atsu's position of being an outcast. He likens himself to her in order to make them feel familiar and not as strangers or as enemies. It's actually not too different than how he continuously calls her Little Wolf. He would go on to ask if during her time fighting on the mainland, any clan would make her a samurai. Her bitter response of "you know I didn't" betrays Atsu knows Saito is well aware of that and just asks to insult her. Given Saito's own background and knowledge, it's obvious he would have indeed already knew Atsu's answer. However, instead of insulting her, I take this as a miscalculation on Saito. He doesn't modify his attempt for Atsu specifically. He works on her the same way he would win many people prior to her to his side, by softening them up in a way where they have to acknowledge what was rejected to them. In Atsu's case, being an official samurai and finding a lord willing to make her one. Then he quickly follows this up with comparing himself to the shogun and the Matsumai, putting them down while appearing to be that benevolent lord. Atsu of course sees through this and calls his promise of freedom as the same as any other lord's promise of honor, which in her words is complete bullshit. This is where I think Atsu snapping back shouldn't have happened. What she says serves to work as showcasing her doubt in Saito and seeing through his lies, and I would even say this goes as far back as her experience on the mainland, which is rich in her own lore. But for Saito's personal development, I think the best case here would have been for Saito to continue to ride that mentality, freedom and security, and a better way of living. If we reference Saito's letters here and even go as far back as the Night of the Burning Tree, where he regretfully has to make an example out of Master Kengo and his family, would it not make more sense and create a more compelling story to double down on Saito's saving face, doing whatever necessary to protect his image, the very thing shattered in the aftermath of the Battle of Nagashino and forced to face the reality of that situation when Kengo left? A series of events, all resulting in his fractured psyche, shifting blame from himself and his inability to save people on Kengo's defection. Saito's letters are written in a way that appears to elicit sympathy and understanding for future generations to gain insight on Nariaki Saito and the decisions as a lord. Within these letters, he also speaks affectionately of his sons, how the spider and the dragon are his left and right hand man, the only connections to his wife and daughter that had passed away, the ones that will carry on his legacy when he passes on. These are sentiments that are completely contradicted within the game's cutscenes. They may be his left and right hand man, but there is no respect. There is nothing but disappointment between the father and these two sons. I'm not asking or trying to pull a what if in this entire scenario. I'm more so saying there are breadcrumbs Sucker Punch has already laid within these letters and cutscenes that are consistent with someone that appears one way, yet behind closed doors harbors a cruel and extremely vindictive side. What Oyuki endured at the hands of Saito with the spider sharing with Atsu, had he and his brother not killed her and Jubei that night, they would have suffered far worse at the hands of their father, further reinforces that. Saito has this ability that he does incredibly well within this moment to try to win people over to his side. He also seems to have the incredible ability to leave his conscience somewhat clear by way of letting the other Yotei 6 members handle the more heinous atrocities like killing children. These letters, written the way that they are, apply gentle language with acknowledgement of the killing of Kengo. Perhaps an event so large there was no choice but to acknowledge it. Yet there's no further accountability for anything else going on at this time. In terms of the Oni's forced labor program in the Ishikari Plains, or the Nine Tails' campaign of terror on the population of Teshio Ridge, narrowing his own accountability to just Kengo's slaughter. In his letter on Clan Matsumai, he describes how the Matsumai have limited their travel, demand permits, and force settlers to build checkpoints, painting them as the oppressors. With this being the first time he directly confronts Atsu, instead of toying with her the way that he does, it would have been 1,000 times better and made him so much more of an interesting character had they doubled down on the notion of saving face, shifting that blame, or doing anything in his power to further protect his image of being a benevolent lord. The game starts opening up more once we're shown Saito's relationship with his two sons. And this is the point where it makes sense to go back to the Khan in Tsushima, because while Saito had the potential to be a more layered character and the game didn't follow through, the Khan's strategy, on the other hand, actually develops in a much more interesting direction. A big part of that comes from how he uses Jin's oldest friend, Rizo. Now, the game never explains the exact point where Rizzo joins the Khan. We only get insights into the history of Rizzo and Jin, and of course his growing frustration with feeding his men. That's the simple part. But the Khan then pushes him deeper by forcing Rizzo to burn people alive just to open the gates for his forces, no longer just being a traitor to his best friend but to his people, reminding us that the Khan can be quite savage in his war. We've seen so in his introduction and how he decapitated Lord Adachi. Yet despite having this ability to steep to such level, he still tries to remain level-headed with Jin and Lord Shimura. I also want to take this time to point out how this lines up with the Khan's earlier point about knowing which villages to tame and which to burn. His army acts in a way that matches that mindset. Yarikawa is where this becomes the clearest. The region becomes the site of a siege. Clan Yarikawa had a long reputation on Tsushima for producing the island's best swordsmen. They weren't loyal to Lord Shimura, and they resented his rule. But even with that resentment, they were too proud to ever side with the invaders. The Khan doesn't want to waste men trying to storm the town, so he instead forces them behind their walls, burns the surrounding area, and locks them into a siege, fitting his overall approach. Avoid unnecessary losses, weaken the defenders, and move in once they're all worn down. And thus, this invading force, no matter where you are on the island, shows that there is an established hierarchy and they all act in accordance to the Khan's vision, something that is lacking with Saito and the Yotei 6. This then ties into how the Khan handles Jin as the ghost. He sees Jin as unpredictable and hard to plan around, so he uses the one person he knows will hit Jin the hardest, Rizzo. It's a practical move. Rizzo knows Jin, knows how he fights, and knows where he'll hesitate. The Khan isn't just adapting to be philosophical or symbolic, he's actually adopting because it works. The real issue isn't just that the Khan uses Rizzo, it's the sequence and how he uses him. Originally, leveraging his friendship and knowledge of Jin and the bounty placed on his friend's head, and then tying him closer to the Mongol war effort by committing a literal war atrocity, going so far as to showing Rizzo's active participation by coming up with the plan of capturing Jin and giving the Khan an opportunity to speak to him directly. That adaptability is what makes the Khan feel more like a calculated, evolving commander. And it's also what makes Saito's arc feel the opposite. Saito doesn't come across as a disciplined ruling shogun. He feels more like an arrogant, insecure ronin pretending to be something greater. Someone who talks about discipline and control but constantly cracks under any pressure that challenges his image. But even when doing so, it's done in an unsatisfying way. The Khan has cutscenes where he appears to be logical and well-meaning. And then he has cutscenes where he's willing to do whatever necessary, even turn someone into the worst possible traitor. Saito has this moment where he appears to be well-meaning and you hear firsthand everything that he preaches to the people that buy into it, but you don't have really any cutscene that betrays that well-meaning side of him. It's hearsay, but it's not set in stone to Saito's detriment as the better fleshed out character like I think he should have been, like he could have been. If we go back to the training camp fight between Saito and Atsu, it's a very similar pattern. Before they even clash, he says he wants to see what she's learned over the last 16 years that she spent on the mainland. But the second Atsu demands that he draw his katana and stop playing with her, he hides behind his status. He says it'd be unfair to her, that drawing his blade would diminish his standing as a warrior. There might be a little bit of protecting her, maybe there isn't. But no matter what, the fact that he says that'll diminish his standing as a warrior means that no matter what Atsu does throughout the entire portion of this game, he never properly respects her until both of his sons are killed, and she breaks his yari in half. The Khan adapts because he respects his threat. Saito refuses to adapt out of a mix of not respecting his enemy and holding himself to a standard that comes at the cost of his own leadership and overall success. That difference is what separates the two arcs. One shows an invader adjusting his actions to counter a growing threat, even if it does fall short. The other shows a leader slipping further into insecurity while pretending he's above everyone else around him. I've said it a few times already, I love Saito as a villain. But when I look at everything that was left on the table, it's hard to not see how he could have been one of the best villains in gaming. His letters tell you how important Master Kengo was to him, the loss of his wife and daughter, and the things he did to cope with that grief. I'm not saying the game needed to spoon-feed all of us this or every single detail, but even one cutscene, something simple like going back to an interaction between Kengo and Saito would have helped tie everything together. It would have connected the larger conflict of the game with Atsu's personal story in a much cleaner way. That's why I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you played both games, which character do you think was handled better? The Khan is far from perfect. I'm not putting him on his pedestal, at least I'm not trying to, but there's a real issue when you compare how both villains are presented. With Saito, you get the best insight by reading his letters. Meanwhile, with the Khan, even if you completely ignore his letters, his cutscenes alone, the way he talks, the way he adjusts his strategy, and the way he uses people, already gives you a much stronger presence. So when one villain has the deeper backstory on paper, but the other villain feels more compelling just by watching how he behaves on screen, it's hard but not feel like the ball was dropped somewhere. One character relies on the player doing extra homework while the other is built directly into the game's storytelling. That contrast makes the gap between them a lot more obvious. And I think for a lot of people, when you're looking within the same IP, comparisons between entries and how things are done are only going to come up more naturally.